You're listening to Packers Talk Network.
Packers Talk.
Welcome to the Packers Weekly Podcast, part of PackersTalkNetwork.com. I'm your host, Miles Teddick, joined by your co-host, Tim Hamilton. We are diehard Packers fans, just love talking about the Pack. We're not getting into all the national sports media nonsense that they get into. We're talking about the Pack, top topics around the Pack, every week, breaking down games during the season and sorting through all the drama and the rumors and the draft. The off season. If y'all want to support the podcast, please spike that like button for us. Give us a follow on all the socials. Most importantly, head on over to that Packers Talk Network YouTube channel right now. Go do it real quick. Click, click, click. Hit that subscribe button. Hit the little bell next to it. Those things take you mere seconds and make a huge difference for us. So thank you all to our listeners and subscribers for joining us every Monday at 9:30 p.m. All right, this evening, we got some fun stuff to talk about. Goody giving us a few nuggets of information. We got somebody on the move on the O-line. I think the O-line just got better. We'll see. We're talking O-line draft talk as well, and plenty in between. But first, our show is sponsored once again by Wisconsin's own Ticket King. For over 30 years, Ticket King has been providing Packers tickets to Packers fans, as well as Bucks tickets, Brewers tickets, Summerfest tickets. Coming up, y'all get them. You can find them on the web at theticketking.com or visit their locations in Green Bay and Milwaukee. Remember to support your local Wisconsin businesses. Sorry for that Texan accent, butchering that for you guys. I know you love it. But definitely got to support the small businesses. Get out there, get after it. All right, Tim. Good evening, sir. How we doing?
Good evening. I was doing good. How are you? We're getting close to draft season. Well, we're in draft season. I guess we're
coming up, man. It's just
really close now. Yeah,
we got all the mind games going on. We got Goody out there giving us some information. Is it real information? Is it fake information? Could be fake information for all we know. But yeah, some interesting things. I don't know that the Jenkins to center. I don't think that's fake information. What do you think?
No, that's definitely true. And that just kind of confirms the reports that were out there after they signed Aaron Banks. So yeah, definitely. That one's true for sure.
Yeah. That one I'm particularly excited about. I think that makes the O-line better. I think you get stability right there in the middle where it can be very valuable to have. We know that Jenkins is a strong player. We know he's played center very well. So this, I think, is a great move. And I think it aligns with what you try to do as a front office in free agency, which is give yourself flexibility going into the draft. I think they do that with this move. You know, you've got a lot better chance of saying, look, we know this guy can play center. Let's find a few guys who can play guard, right? Rather than let's find a guy who can play center. Oh, yeah, let's also find some other pieces, guard, maybe tackle as well. So, yeah, I think that this was a good move for them, giving them flexibility along that O-line. I think it makes the O-line better. You think it makes the O-line better?
Yeah. I mean, I think in the simplest ways, you're replacing Josh Myers with Elton Jenkins, and that's an upgrade to me.
Upgrade.
You upgraded at center. Yes, Aaron Banks is not as good as Elton Jenkins at left guard. I get that.
Sure.
But I think if you want to look at it player to player, I think Aaron Banks is a better player at left guard than Josh Myers was at center. So I think overall you're going to upgrade your offensive line. Maybe it's not as strong at left guard, but it's much improved at center. So if we want to go at it like that. But yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense. I think there's, when Elton Jenkins, he played a lot of center in college. And when he came out, that was some of the thought was maybe he's an eventual center. Maybe he's a guard. We've obviously seen him play tackle. We've seen him play everywhere. I mean, He's the rare offensive lineman that can play anywhere. But center may end up being a really good spot for him. And especially at this point in his career, I know he's not old, but he's 29 years old. He missed a lot of practice time last year with kind of a knee injury that they didn't really discuss, but maybe that's kind of a thing that as he gets older, he's going to be needed to be managed more. Maybe he's having a little bit of trouble bending as well as he used to early in his career. Perhaps the move to center might help him a little bit. I also think he's a really smart player and can help as far as protections and what you need at a center. You need a smart center. So I think he can help and take some of that pressure off Jordan Love. But yeah, I think overall, I think they're a better offensive line today than they were at the end of last season. It makes tons of sense to move him, especially once they signed Banks. That was the obvious move. And yeah, I'm fine with that. And that's what we expected. And I think he'll be really good at center next season.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, overall, it's a nice net positive move, I think, for everybody.
Yeah.
Hopefully Jenkins can flourish there. I think he can. But yeah, and again, flexibility, right? Yeah, you got Banks. He'll start somewhere, but now you can be certain it'll be at guard, right? I think this gets you a little bit more, or I should say, get you a little closer to what they've been talking about, which is your best five, right? I think Jenkins at center just sort of gives you your best shot at having the next best two guys be at guard. I shouldn't say next best. Obviously, Zach Tom is probably the best at this point, and pretty solidified out there at right tackle. But I mean, it gives you that flexibility, right, to get to that best five, and that's what they've been pretty adamant about trying to achieve. Guard and center can sometimes be interchangeable, but maybe also not. So I think, not really having as many questions at that center position makes a lot of other things more fluid. But that's just one of the talking points. There were a few other things that Goot got into. One of the things that we have talked about previously has been, the balance between players and coaches, right? How much do you expect a player to be a good player versus how much do you expect the coach to contribute to that player being a good player? And, Goot made some comments about that, right? He was asked about the pass rush and if he feels the need to chase edge rush talent, I think is something along the lines, right? Was that the question? He didn't feel the need to chase or something like that. But he said that they have everything. They can do everything they need with the guys they have, right? Isn't that essentially
right? That's essentially what he have is that he feels comfortable with the guys that they have right now, that they can be productive and they can do what they want to do with those guys.
Right.
And, there's a couple different ways you can look at that. And I think that was something you and I had talked about at the end of the season when they made the coaching change on the defensive line was like, yeah, a new coach can certainly help. And it's abundantly clear that they thought, Jason Rebovich, the previous coach, didn't do a very good job. All the comments that have come out since then is like improving from within, and we have the guys. And it's partially, year two of the scheme, but it's also DeMarcus Covington coming in as the D-line coach will improve things a lot too. But that was kind of our fear too when we started talking about this, when they made the switch along the defensive line, was like, yeah, they need a coach. They need a new approach there. Something just wasn't working. There's no reason Kenny Clark should have had such a disappointing season. There's no reason, Rashawn Gary should have been so inconsistent, and Lucas Van Ness didn't develop, and
not going forward. Yeah.
Right. And Brooks took a step back, and, Wyatt was kind of up and down. There's no reason for that. Like
right.
A lot of that is on the coaching, but at the same time, I think we both feel that they need players too. Like you can't just say, all right, Covington's going to fix it all. It's just a coaching change. It's just, they'll be much better in year two with the new scheme. Like,
right.
That can help a lot. Sure. But I still think they need players. Like they just need better players too. And Goody's comments. Now this is the time of year free agency is basically over. So it's draft season and there's a lot of secrets, and, he doesn't want to tip his hand about anything, and it's lying season, if he's going to say some things
season.
And I don't think he was lying. I just think he's keeping things tight. He doesn't want to come out there and say, yeah, we definitely need to add pass rushers, because that's, that's telling the teams around them in the draft what the Packers are looking for. And that kind of, teams get so ridiculously nervous about that kind of stuff. But I'm hoping that's kind of a smokescreen, and that he really is targeting pass rushers both on the inside and on the edge, because I think they need guys. I don't think they can just say, you know what, the coaching change will be good enough. They're going to improve in the year two of the system. And, if we end up getting an edge rusher or a pass rushing defensive tackle, we get one. If we don't, we're fine. and then we come out of the draft and they get somebody on day 3 who's a major project, and who knows, who that player will, if that player will stick or not. Like, I think they need immediate improvement. They need early round improvement, and they need multiple guys inside and on the edge. So I'm hoping part of what, I agree with what he said, that they do have guys there that can be good and can develop and have that potential. But I'm also hoping that he knows, keeping it internal, that they need to get immediate help early in this draft at pass rusher.
Yeah, and I lean on the coaching side of this, right? That's been my argument this whole time is, I think fans get a little bit quick to throw the players out, like, oh, he stinks, get him out of here. I'm so old that I can remember when people wanted to give Jaire Alexander a lifetime contract. That's how old I am. And it's very quick to me. It's very impulsive to be like, oh, this guy sucks, get him out of here. And people are like already labeling Van Ness a bust. It's like, dude, he's only been in the league a couple of years. You gotta pump the brakes. These guys take years to develop sometimes, and I think on an individual conversation, most people don't have a hard time grasping that, but there's this outrage of like, oh, we never get this guy, or we never get the good player, we never get this, never get that. And it's just like, we gotta like chill out a little bit and think about, if you've seen a player be good, all right, he's capable of it. Now you want to see the coach bring that out of him as often and consistently as possible. When you only see players be good like once here, they like just that light just kind of flickers. That's a sign of not good coaching, and it could be a whole range of things. Maybe coach doesn't know what the heck he's talking about, or maybe personalities don't jive, or for some reason, what he's putting down, the way the players are picking it up just doesn't fit with what, the defensive scheme calls for. There's a lot of ways that things can get lost in translation, and maybe you're just not a good communicator. I don't know. It's hard to evaluate coaches from the sidelines like we sometimes may try to do as fans, or maybe that's why fans avoid doing that altogether. It's because, like, I don't know, hell, how do you evaluate a coach? He doesn't have a Madden rating. So I think we overlook that, but it's definitely part of the equation, and so I'm excited to see what can happen here, because the guys on this defensive front, we'll call it, the interior and the edge guys, we've seen all of them play exceptional football. All of them, right? Like, none of them, you just look at him like, this guy's always a bum. There's no like, and I hate to like throw shade, but there's no like Jared Bush. You know what I mean? Like, as soon as I say he's always a bum, he was a special teams captain. They loved him, but just as a
big
DB,
interception in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, that's true. I guess that, like, we got to kind of, you got to give the guys due. But yeah, I just remember as a fan during the Jarrett Bush days being perpetually frustrated with this guy because he just couldn't play DB. And he was a good special teamer, and that's great. And then he did come up with, a good play. But anyway, the point being, there's no guy like that on the D line where you're just perpetually disappointed in them. All of them have played good football. At some point you've seen them play good football. You're like, dang, that guy's good. So what you really want to see, and I think that's where Gute's kind of putting his foot down and saying, look, we have good football players. We've seen them play good football before. We need the coaches to get that out of them, and that's the part that he's not going to say out loud because he's a gentleman and a professional. But that's probably the stuff that he's talking to LaFleur about. It's like, look, dude, we've got good players. We need to get it out of them. Like, what do you want? And I don't think that that's him. And I say all of that to say, I don't think he's here to ignore the pass rush, but I believe him when he says he doesn't feel pressure to go chase a pass rusher. And that could actually end up, after the draft, be a very prophetic statement, right? Like, there may be somebody we want him to go get. He doesn't go do it because, that's not how they have him graded. And then he explains that later on. Who knows? Like, the draft is so much fun because it's so unpredictable. But I think you're right. It's fog of war season, right? He's going to say things and they're going to be, cryptic and vague because you either don't want people picking up on what you're saying, or you do and you want to intentionally mislead them. Either way, it's hard to follow if you're operating under that assumption. So what I think we have to do is, parse it out. Like what have the actions been, right? We've seen a few actions, but they haven't added any D linemen in free agency, which I don't think I expected them to. I think the edge rusher is something we were maybe hoping for, like a Josh Sweat, but that was probably the extent of the realistic hopes for that. I don't think there was any room for an interior guy to come around. Now, that said, there's so much interior defensive line talent in this draft. That's probably why. It's like you don't want to just go stacking bodies for the sake of stacking bodies, and then you don't get to evaluate them right. So, yeah, I'm kind of interested in how this continues to develop. But, again, I'm team coach, right? Like I have high expectations for the coaches. And if players aren't playing well, I'm quick to go and ask this coach if he knows what he's doing or not. That's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah. And I agree with you, and I see your point of view, and I'm not ready to get rid of any of these guys. Like we've seen flashes from all of them. Like we've seen Lucas Van Ness with some flashes. We just haven't seen very many of them or very consistent with them. But I'm not trying to get rid of them. I just think that they can bring in guys to raise the talent level, raise the floor. And if a Lucas Van Ness goes in, going into year 3, he's still not making that jump, then you have somebody that you've already drafted, that you're already developing, that can jump him on the depth chart. You have somebody that's better than Kingsley Navarre or Brenton Cox, or inside, there's a lot of Devontae Wyatt's going into his potentially last year of his contract. Kenny Clark, they can get out of his contract. He's coming off a bad year. Like Brooks and Wonder, like I just think you can add to for the future. And you can add that could help you in the present and developmental while trying to develop the guys you still have. I think coaching is a lot of that system, being year 2 in the system is a lot of that as well. But I just think they need talent. And, it'll be interesting. Do they move Kenny Clark back to nose tackle now? Because they tried him at 3 technique. It didn't work. Was it coaching? Was it just his comfortability? Are they going to go back to that? Or are they going to say, you know what, let's put him back on the nose where he was really good before that? And maybe the results will follow. Maybe that's what he needs. That's one of the things. And then it's developing Wyatt and Van Ness and getting all that potential that we see in them to be there week after week instead of there 1 week. And then for the next 3 weeks, you don't see it. And then you get a glimpse of it and then you don't see it again. And all like the riding a roller coaster, like you need to see progress.
Yeah.
And it is a very deep defensive line class on the interior, more so than the edge. But I think there's some good edge rushers too. And I think that's part of why, like, they didn't replace TJ Slayton. I think they're going to. And I think they can. If you come out of this draft and you didn't take a defensive tackle, I would be shocked. And I don't think it would be a good idea because there's just so many guys that can help your team and improve what you have. So I think that's a target for him. And then I hope they add the edge rusher just because it's going to raise that bar for the guys that are already there and give you like that fallback option. If Van Ness doesn't take a step, okay, then you got player X who you just drafted in the 1st or 2nd round who's, he's coming. Like he gives you another guy to develop. It's not, all right, Van Ness didn't take another step. And then you're sitting there like, now what do we do? Now you're in the same boat. So yeah, I guess I'm not surprised by Goody's comments. I'm just hoping that it's one of those things like he's comfortable with the guys he has, but let's see how the board falls on draft nights. And if guys are there, he's going to take them. And not one of those things, well, if there's an edge rusher there, but there's a, cornerback they like too, they're going to take the cornerback. Like maybe they lean towards the edge rusher. But I think maybe that's it. Maybe he looks at it like I'm comfortable with who we have if we don't end up getting anyone, but we're not going to bypass anyone either. So
I'd be okay with that. And our friend Chris, the casual in here, Kenny's gas, too many snaps over the years, all those double teams. I hear that. I just think it's probably more along what you were saying, Tim, which is, he's out at 3 tech. Does he go back to nose? When the coaching is part of the issue, which I am making a strong assumption that it is, and it sounds like that's what Goody's alluding to, then sometimes that can be a coach saying, oh, no, we can do this, we can do that, we can put a guy here, we can put a guy there, and sort of insisting that you can make something work when you shouldn't, right? It's kind of like Clay Matthews playing inside linebacker versus pass rusher. He was a good inside linebacker. He didn't like being an inside linebacker. He wanted to be a pass rusher. You know, and there may be some of that going on too, where it's like, hey, Kenny, we need you out here. And, you know, I know you don't like it. You're not as good at it. You know, you'd rather be back at nose. I think there could be some of that going on, you know, and there's always ego as a factor when coaching's involved too. So my whole philosophy around coaching is coaches should put guys in positions to be successful. And if you're insisting a guy play somewhere and he's not having as much success, you're probably doing something wrong, you know? And so I'm interested to see how all of this kind of waterfalls down, right? So you replace the coach. Does that lift the, you know, the group you have? I think it does. Some of them are going to get older and smarter and stronger and faster. And that's a good thing, right? These guys are aging a little bit, maturing a little bit. None of them are old. Even Kenny's not an old guy, as much as he is the old guy. But yeah, so I think there's some of that. But then I'm with you. I'm like, don't pass up the talent. You know, you got Shamar Stewart sitting there. Let's not get foolish now, right? Let's play the money ball game a little bit and look at the data, look at the numbers. You know, it says that the freaky athletes are you know, at the pass rusher position are the ones who do well in the NFL. All right, well, you got a freaky athlete right there, man. Don't think twice about the production. Go get him. Go get your freaky athlete and add him to the room. And that adds a whole other element of competition, right? Because he's going to be faster, stronger, jumping higher. You know what I mean? Like, he's going to set the tone in that room just from a physical perspective. And that's a good thing too. Nothing wrong with adding more competition to the room. That's been the theme. But yeah, I look at it like I have a lot of optimism that the group will be better just by Covington coming in as the new D-line coach and raising the floor of the group. So I'm looking forward to that. I do look forward to see who they can add to this group. I don't think that there's as many opportunities to add pass rushers. There's a few, right? There's a few good ones that are out there at the top. After that, I think it's going to be that interior D line. Like, if you can just find a monster, and there's a bunch of them, but find the monsteriest monster, just the meanest, biggest dude who's going to barrel through that offensive line and cause them problems all day. Find that guy. Basically the TJ Slayton. And I agree with you. I think that's why they let him go, is that they see plenty of TJ Slaytons in this draft. And that's not a bad thing. That's not to knock him and call him a common guy. This is an uncommon draft. Yeah. So but I'm with you as far as the number of them too. I can't imagine you come out of this draft without an interior D lineman, but I really can't imagine you come out without like 3. There's so many. I think it's just going to be at the point where, especially on day 3, you're going to come up to those picks and it's just like, yeah, the best guy available is still a D tackle. So we're going to take another one, you know, and that's just going to be because of how deep it is. It'll be a D tackle or a running back, you know, like those are the two.
Yeah. And I think they can get their pass rusher at defensive tackle. And then I think they can get, you know, a day 3 TJ Slayton, which is what TJ Slayton was, like a 5th round pick. I think they can get that, you know, a guy who's a run stuffer is not going to give you a much pass rush. He might push the pocket a little bit, but he's going to be your run stuffer, your first and second down, and that's fine. TJ Slayton did a good job at it. There's a ton of defensive tackles who have played a long time, bounced around from teams. They're important players. But I think you can find that guy in this draft on day 3. There's a few of them. And I think on day 1, day 2 is when you're going to get your pass rushing defensive tackle. And there's a bunch of those as well.
Yeah, and if you look at what the Eagles do well and why they had so much success, it's not because they've just got studs on the edge, which they do, but the guys in the middle are releasing everybody else. They're freeing up everybody else, from the pass rushers to the linebackers to the DBs. Everybody else played really well on that Eagles defense because of how well that interior D line played. You know, and they're monsters. They're huge. We saw them coming out of Georgia. I cannot believe that the NFL allowed both of those guys to go to the Eagles, but the Eagles are probably sitting there thinking the same thing. But they're monsters, and they do make everybody's life easier on the defense. So if you can find a guy like that, which again there are several, in this class, you got to scoop them up, and I think they will. So I think that this D-line group gets a lot better, both by addition of players, but also the coaching upgrade. And I'll call it an upgrade. Let's just assume it's an upgrade because you're not going to make an intentional downgrade. That would be silly. But yeah, you got to let it play out. There's a lot of pieces, a lot of variables, a lot of things that we still don't know. There might just be personalities that don't work well together, and that's been changed, and that just makes everybody's mood better. You never know. You just never know how those things work. Let's see here. We got the comments going. Michael Redden says, "Are either of you going to the draft?" Yeah, Michael, I don't think so. I don't think we're going to make it. I was holding out some hope that I could. And I am not going to be able to now. Things are way too hectic around here at home, in a good way, not in a bad way, in a good way, but can't walk away from that. And Tim, am I assuming things for you, or you got some plans to go to the draft?
I wish. No, I won't be there, but I'll be watching it. Be watching all 3 days of it.
Yeah, and maybe we'll live stream some of it with you guys, and we can do some draft chatter to talk about picks. Sure. We'll see how the things fall out. But yeah, it's it is what it is. You got to do what you can. I got a lot of family stuff going on here at home, growing family down here, and can't get away from it. It's too tough. And I'm down here in Texas. It's like 1,000 miles away. It's more than 1,000. It's a long ways away, man. You're pretty far away too.
Yeah, not close.
Yeah, so there's too much going on there. But I do wish we could. I wish we could, and we're gonna be covering it and talking plenty of draft with you guys as it unfolds. Also, maybe doing some live tweeting should be fun. But there's going to be a ton of people out there. There's you guys that are going to the draft. Cheers to you. You have a blast. Enjoy. Soak it up. Hopefully the draft comes back to Green Bay because they do it so well.
It's going to be awesome.
But yeah, it is. It's going to be pretty cool. And then we got Chris the Casual in here throwing out some pick suggestions, I think. Derek Harmon, number 54. That's been one of my if we got to make a my guy list, I think he's on mine at this point. I would like that pick at 23 or wherever they deem necessary. Yeah, Derek Harmon's a good one. Let's see. You got another one for us. Donovan Izuruku. I'm not going to pretend that I can nail that name, but also another fine choice. We will get an episode here in the next couple of weeks for the D-line and the pass rushers. So, don't take all of this for our official input on the D-line and pass rusher. We got lists coming. We got thoughts. Got some scouting tape to do here. So
that'll be
buckle up for that.
There's a lot to say about the D-line and the edge rushers, and we're going to get to all that. I think we start that next week, actually. So yeah. There we go. So there we go. Breaking news. But yeah, there's a lot to talk about. But there's a lot to talk about on the other side from the guys that have to block all those guys and protect the rest of the league from the Eagles' nasty front seven. And those are the guys that we're talking about tonight, and I don't know who Craven Moorhead is, but Dime Drawer. Do you think the Packers could sign Craven Moorhead to shore up the O-line? He's trolling us.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. I guess he's got nothing better to do than to sound like Beavis and Butthead. So
give him his attention that he asked for. Might as well. But we are talking big nasties tonight. We're talking about the O-linemen, talking about the guys that we could be drafting, right? So we already talked about the guys we got. Elgton Jenkins comes in, and he's at center, so you solidify the center. Now you got potentially Mr. Banks coming in at left guard. I don't know. I just say guard. Call him guard. Whoever fits where they can.
Yeah, he's a left guard.
I think Jordan Morgan's going to get a shot at that right guard spot. But, you're going to get a chance to add some decent guys, I think, in this draft. I don't know how much they will prioritize the O-line. So I don't know who, which pool of dudes we're picking from, whether it be the top, day 2, day 3. But tackles, interior O-line, all of it, we're going into it tonight. So, Tim, why don't you kick us off with the tackles here, man? What are we looking at?
Yeah, and I think I'll pose a little question to you because this kind of came up, I think, late last week. There was an ESPN mock draft, and I think it was Matt Miller for ESPN, right? He did the mock draft, and his pick for the Packers in the first round was Kelvin Banks, the tackle out of Texas. And apparently he caused a stir in Packers, online world, blogosphere, whatever you want to call it. How could they take another offensive lineman? They took Morgan last year. They just paid Banks a lot of money. Morgan might not even start. He's going to compete at right guard. He might compete a little bit at left tackle. You don't need an offensive lineman in the first round again. So people got upset about it. I'm kind of surprised because, and I'm going to pose the question to you about how you feel about it. But for me personally, like if they took an offensive tackle in the first round this year, I would be fine with it. Like I have no problem with that. If you have a franchise quarterback who's making whatever 50 million, 55 million, protect him at all costs. Like you can't have enough offensive linemen. You just went through an incredibly lucky year with injuries on the offensive line. It's probably not going to happen.
That's the exception.
Again.
That's not the rule.
That's right. It's not going to happen again. You saw what happened when you lost Elton Jenkins, one dude in the playoff game against the Eagles. It wrecked your offense. Like, get as many guys as you can. You don't want Andre Dillard being your next guy up. You don't want Kadeem Telford and Travis Glover, guys that weren't ready to play NFL games, being your next guys up. And they were able to avoid that all year until the playoff game. Like,
they saw what happened then. We also saw what happened when Bakhtiari went down. We just don't want that.
Right. And look at how that put him in, multiple times. Like how many?
Yeah.
Right. So you have 6 guys, I think, right now that you can count on. The starting 5 who we talked about, and Jordan Morgan, whether he's, takes Sean Ryan's job at right guard or not, I don't think he's going to take Rashid's spot, but and that was one of the Goody said they're going to give him a shot at left tackle, but it kind of sounds like he's primarily going to compete at right guard. But whatever. They have 6 guys right now. You have Jacob Monk, who they're bringing back. You have Glover and Telford. I would have no problem adding to that. You have 3 free agents on the offensive line at the end of next season. So we don't know what the future holds there. Elton Jenkins' contract's up after 2026. They typically don't give out third contracts. Like, if there's a really good offensive tackle that they like at 23, go ahead and take him. And if he doesn't start year 1, so be it. But get him in the building and develop him. So I don't know why it was such pissed so many people off, Packer fans. I guess they just don't want another offensive lineman, but I'm fine with it. Like, that's an important position.
It's not a shiny enough toy, Tim.
That's what it is.
Shiny toys only.
Like, how many teams have bad offensive lines around football, and it kills them, year after year. Like, to have depth there and have really good players. I mean, that's as good as the Eagles were. And I talk about them because they're the champions and everything. Saquon Barkley was phenomenal, and they have A.J. Brown, right? Devontae Smith. Their offense is so good because of their offensive line. That's the engine that drives them, right? I would love, develop your offensive lineman year after year. Have that so that
have a pipeline,
right? And it'll make everything easier on offense. So that's me. If they took an offensive lineman in the first round, I'm fine with it. I have no problems. It sounds like you feel the same way too.
I do. I'm so firmly in the Goot we trust camp right now because we've just been proven time and time again that he knows what he's doing, right? You can't say he's perfect. Yeah, he's had misses, but when the decision was made, they look like good decisions. Eric Stokes had a phenomenal rookie year. He gets hurt. Now he's not as good. That's not Goot's fault. That's not because Goot's a bad GM. Right? Like, it's not, right. He's a bust. He hasn't hit on any of his first round picks. Okay, but when you go back and you look at those first round picks, when he made them, they look like pretty good picks, right? It is what it is. Like, you can only ask the guy to make the best decision he can make. You can't fault him for what happens after that, and I think that for me, it was the Jordan Love pick, right? If he nails that, you got my trust. If you don't, you look like an idiot, and maybe you're not the guy. Like, maybe you got a little over your skis, but he nailed it, and Jordan Love doesn't have to be the best quarterback in the NFL for him to nail that pick. He nailed the pick because he's a good starting quarterback. He nailed the pick because he's proven he can win. He's proven he can be one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL, but his teammates also like him. right? He's a guy you can build around because the team actually wants to build around him. Like that's part of the equation for sure. And he's a first round pick worthy player in hindsight, right? You look at what he's done, what he can do, who he can be. Yeah, you spend a first round pick on that guy. At the time, you're like, oh, this is awful. You know, like we needed T. Higgins. And it's just, I'm sorry. I'd rather have Jordan Love, right? Like I see what the Bengals are doing with T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. It's not working. It's not working. Now they're really screwed because they're paying 3 guys like 80% of the salary cap or something stupid. So good luck to them. They're never going to be able to build a team, but they got the shiny objects, I guess. I'm not in that anymore. You know, do I want to see, you know, fun players come to the team? Yeah. You know, a really fast guy or a really big guy, you know, really athletic guy. Shamar Stewart would be so much fun to add to this team. I would love that. It would have been really fun to add DK Metcalf to this team. Just, you know, for the video game perspective, it would be fun to have him on that offense for sure. The reality of that is not as good. You know, the reality of that is he's an expensive guy that, does he get you closer to a Super Bowl? Data says no, right? Like it's not the receivers that are throwing teams over the edge. It's these other positions. And Goody somewhat said that earlier. We've talked about that before, where he's said that like if you pay those guys, those $30 million a year guys that have to have high targets, well, the teams with high target guys don't go deep in the playoffs. And lo and behold, he's right. Now you can say AJ Brown, but I'm going to say Saquon Barkley, you know, like.
Or the guys up front.
Yeah, AJ Brown's there, and he's a very good receiver, but he's not a high target guy, not like what Goody's talking about with, you know, Justin Jefferson or Jamar Chase. So I trust him. You know, if you're at 23 and you say that the tackle is the best player available for the board, deal. I'm in. Now you've given yourself even more flexibility. If it works out, that's great. You don't have to re-sign Rasheed Walker. Or, you know, maybe you can trade him, or maybe you do sign him. I don't know. You have the depth. But bottom line is it gives you depth and flexibility at one of the most important positions right now that you need that. I mean, if you don't think the offensive line is important, just go study the Bears for the last 15 years. Find out how important it is.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. And it's the flexibility thing, right? Like you don't know how these contracts, I'm sure they want to re-sign Zach Tom, but until it's done, it's not done, right?
Right.
Rasheed Walker's coming up. Sean Ryan's coming up. Elton Jenkins is getting closer, right? And he's already had a second contract. So, like, there's a lot of unknowns there. I'm fine with it. I have no problem with it if they went offensive tackle in the first round. I don't think it's that likely, but it wouldn't shock me. Like, that's a priority position for them, which is what they typically like to draft in most cases in the first round. They have, you know, gone linebacker and they went with the safety and Savage, but it's a priority position. It's incredibly important to have depth and have really good players and just have a pipeline there on the offensive line. So I would be fine with it.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, it really does come down to how the board falls. Our buddy Chris, extend Sheed. Yeah, I like it. I think, you know, Sheed's been a good piece. It's a good depth piece, good guy to have around. I like it. Extend Sheed. But it does. It depends on how the board falls, right? You know, our buddy Michael here, expired contracts factor along the position. But it really does depend on the board because the way that first round could go, you could very well have an Armand Membu fall down, you know, get close enough to where you're like, hey, maybe we need to go get that guy. Like that guy's a serious offensive tackle. Or maybe they really like Kelvin Banks. You know, Goody's at his pro day, the Longhorns pro day. Now there's several Longhorns that could be in consideration for that pick. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, I can't be mad about it. Or hey, Gray Zabel, man, the Senior Bowl hero, Senior Bowl MVP, maybe. They love the Senior Bowl guys. That guy is one that if you get your hands on Gray Zabel, I think that's a great pick.
Well, I think he's going to be center or guard. But
you think so they've got PFF still got him projected as a tackle. Sorry. I could see that too. He's got the build for any of them.
But I think if you look at the offensive tackle class, there's not a franchise guy. Like there's not a surefire, like this guy's
your Joe Alt is not there.
Right. And I think it's an okay class. I think there's some interesting guys in the first round, but I think it falls off really quickly. And I'll say, like, the Packers have been really successful finding these guys day 2 and day 3. So I'm going to trust them and who they take.
Oh, yeah.
But looking at it, there's a lot of like questions, like there's not a whole lot of guys that I like going into day 2 and day 3 at offense, like as pure, like I think he can stick at tackle in the NFL guys. The first round, like Campbell, I like Campbell from LSU. I think his arms, that was one of the debates. So is his arms 33 inches? Or are they 32 and 3/4? Like, come on. Whatever's going on, his arms measured different lengths at the combine and then at his pro day, however that works.
Arm gate.
Yes. Yeah. Like I think he's going to be good. Maybe he does go inside to guard. I think that's a possibility, but I think he can at least you put him at tackle and see if he can handle it there. Membu, who you mentioned, I like him a lot. It'll be interesting. Like he's a right tackle, but maybe a team that drafts him thinks that they can move him to left tackle. I think you should probably keep him at right. Maybe even he's a guard too, but I think he could be a real nice guard for you. It kind of reminds me like where he could go in the draft, at least where Darnell Wright went to the Bears a few years ago. I think he went pick 10. I think that's about where Memphis could go. Yeah, I like him. And then after that, there's some guys with a lot of talent, but a lot of questions. Like Josh Simmons, Ohio State, really good player, tore his ACL, so he's coming off of that. He's got some technique things, some footwork things that he needs to improve for sure, but I think he's got all the talent. Like I think he could be your starting left tackle for 10 years, that sort of guy. But it would be interesting, like how teams view the ACL, and I don't think it's going to have a huge like impact where he falls into the second round. I think he's definitely a solid day 1 guy, but what's that range? Where does he end up going? Banks is a guy a lot of people are saying they think he's going to end up at guard. To me, looking at him, like I would let him fail at tackle before I move him to guard. I think he can do it at tackle. Now, maybe he's nothing more than an average tackle or above average, but not like a top 10, top 12 guy at left tackle. That may be the case. But he's got a lot of ability, and I wouldn't just automatically put him at guard without ever giving him the chance at tackle. Josh Connerly's a guy I like from Oregon. And I see him like I think he's gonna be there at 23. And that, I think that's the guy that the Packers test it well. He's a good mover. He's still really young. He played as a freshman right away, so I think he's gonna be 21 or just turned 21. They like the younger players. He's got a ton of like upside. Like he got better as last season went along. Did a really good job against Abdul Carter in the Big Ten championship.
That's important.
Yes, and the fact that he continues to grow and get better, the Packers like that. They like a young age. They like a really good athlete. He's all those things. I think if they're there at 23, or even if they trade back a little bit later in the first round and they took a tackle, I think he's their guy. I think he would be the guy. That would be my guess, at least. I like him. A lot of things he needs to work on, but you can see like he's got the tools. He's got the athletic build. He's got the size. He's got he shows that he can use his hands well.
Well, that's where I was going to chime in with some of his combine numbers here because he's impressive. He's 6'5", 311 is what he measured in at. Ran a 5.05 40. That's pretty good. But a 34.5 inch vert is very good for a 311 pound guy. Considering you've got some of those receivers, some of those springy 200-pound dudes who are not jumping 34 and a half. That's one thing. That's one of my knocks on Deontay Thornton out of Tennessee. He ran a really fast 40, but I think his vert was like 30 or 32 or something like this. Really low. And you're just like, wait, what? And that's important. That's explosion. Like if you can't get that good vertical jump, not necessarily as a tackle, but as a receiver, that is a big question mark. There's a big question mark there for sure. But, for a tackle, a 300-pound plus man to be able to go 34 and a half, that's freaking impressive, man. It's a lot of explosion. It's a lot of athleticism.
Yeah, I like him a lot. If you look at him where he is now, I wouldn't put him like at the top of the offensive tackle list, but where he could be for how young he is and how much development he still has ahead of him. Like he could be. I don't want to say he's going to be the best tackle in this class, but I think he could be one of the best one of the best tackles to come out of this draft if he hits what he has in him, right? If he hits all that potential. So after that, I think there's kind of a drop off. There's some other guys that, are they right tackle only? Are they guards? Do you like them enough to, take them on the first couple of days? There's actually another kid from Arizona, Jonah, and I'm going to kill his last name. We'll just call him Jonah S. Right? Kind of familiar with Jordan Morgan, who they took out of Arizona last year, but he might end up being a guard, right? I think he's probably a day 2 guy. He's definitely not a first round guy, but I think he probably sticks somewhere. Maybe he's their late second round into the third round kind of guy. There's some ability there. He's a nice player, but is he a guard? Is he a tackle? Maybe he has both of that. And then, we know how they like versatility. He's one guy. I like Wyatt Millam. Now, he's out of West Virginia. He's probably going to end up inside, but he might be one of those guys where he has the versatility where if you had to get by with him starting for you at right tackle for a couple games because of an injury, he could probably do that for you. But he's probably going to be one of those versatile guys that plays inside at guard. Maybe you use him a little bit at tackle. I don't know about center, but maybe you try him there as well. I could see him kind of being a Packers type where they just like his versatility enough to take him. And another kid I kind of like too out of Boston College, Ozzie Trapillo. Probably just a right tackle only, which I think that prevents the Packers from taking him. But he's a massive kid, can add some weight, has a lot of experience starting at right tackle there. If you see him as a potential swing tackle, if you think he could show you the feet and the ability to play left tackle, I think he's a nice day 3 pick, right? Like he could be your eventual swing backup. He's only a right tackle, probably drives down his value for you, but because he's 6'8", he's not gonna. I don't think he's gonna be a good guard at 6'8". But there's enough there. Yeah, that's tough. So, but if you could project them to play both sides, I think that would fit the Packers more than just a pure right guard only, which he's kind of been at Boston College. He had some playing time earlier in his career at left tackle, but. It's how they view. Like, if their coaches see him and say, yeah, we think we can play him on the left side, we can teach him how to play that, and he can be a swing tackle for you, then I think he's a possible Packer as well. But those are kind of some of the guys. Again, it's if you're looking for guys who are going to start for you at tackle, definitely not even year 1, but maybe even year 2, year 3. There's not a ton of those guys. I think you got to get them early. And after that, I think you got to trust. They're just so good finding these day 3 offensive linemen and development. You got to trust the Packers for that. But it falls off. So you're looking for guys that have versatility that can play multiple spots after the first round, maybe after the first 2 rounds, possibly. But not a great draft for tackles. But there's some guys there.
Yeah, and you could pretty much say the same thing about the interior O-line on this one. Up at the top, it's even probably weaker than the tackle side. Your top guy is considered Tyler Booker from Alabama. I might challenge that a little bit after some of the stuff that I've looked into now. I haven't done as much film diving on these guys as I'd like, but I did spend some time at the Shrine Bowl, so I got to see some of those guys. But I'm intrigued by it. I think Tyler Booker will go somewhere. He started a lot at Alabama. He's not the greatest athlete. He's a fair athlete. There's nothing about him that really jumps out at you. His PFF grades are fine, but they're not great. But he's a solid dude. He started Alabama, I think, for 3 straight seasons for a reason. Started as a freshman, I believe, as well. So that's also pretty impressive. He's just always been that guy. He was a 5-star prospect coming out of high school. There's just a lot of pedigree there. He's big, strong, reliable lineman, but just not somebody who's wowing you. You know what I mean? He's not somebody who's just like jumping off the page at me like you got to draft this guy and you're banging the table for him. There's a lot of people last year that were really excited about Graham Barton, right? And he's not that kind of guy. Like, you're just not that excited about him.
He's also not a good athlete. His testing numbers were very poor.
Right. Yeah, they're not great. And and so then you can go down the line. That's where you'll find like a Gray Zabel. You mentioned you expect him to be inside. I think that there's still listing him as a tackle on PFF. But if he does slide into the interior center or guard, he's an excellent one. Like he's one that I get more excited about him than I think most of the others in this class, most of the other offensive linemen. I don't have a 40 time for him, but he's got a 36.5 vertical jump as a 312-pound man. So I just got excited about a 34.5 vertical jump. This guy, same weight, 312, 36.5. That's awesome, man. That's freaking great. That's an incredible explosion, and you need explosion from offensive linemen. You need them bursting out of their stance and into D linemen to get that pop. This is a guy that I'd look at, like, all said and done, you might look at him like one of the better offensive linemen from this entire draft class. I like him a lot. So he's one that I would not be mad about at 23. That might be a little bit higher than you need to get him. But if you're going to, maybe trade back a few spots and then grab him, fine, whatever it is. But I like that guy. Gray Zabel, North Dakota State. I don't know if there's some type of pipeline developing there. He's one, though, that he's got that versatility too, just screams Packers for that reason, and that was one of the things that stood out to me about Jordan Morgan this time last year. It's like he just seemed like a Packer dude. Kind of the same thing with Gray Zabel. And this other guy, Tate Ratledge. Man, if you could get drafted on your personality and your mullet alone, this guy is the first overall pick.
That's TJ Lang. That's who he reminds me of.
Boom, TJ Lang. And here we go with his athleticism, where he actually had a really nice athleticism score as well. He ran a 4.97 40 at 308 pounds. Pretty damn good to get under 5 when you're 300 plus pounds. He's only got a 32-inch vertical, which not bad. It's just not, 34 or 36 like some of his other counterparts there, but still 32 is fine for a big man like that. But, he's got the flow. He's got the mullet, so he can play O-line.
That should bump him up at least around with the mullet.
That's one of those things, man. If you're gonna rock a mullet, you can probably pull and block and all of that. So no, he's out of Georgia, starting guard. Another one that's got the pedigree. He was a 5-star recruit coming out of high school. It looks like he really didn't start playing until he was in his 3rd year in college. But started 14 games at right guard in 2022 for the national champions and has started since then. So it's like the guy's good, right? Plug him, play him, start him. He's won games. He's played for great teams, blocked for great running backs. And so it's one of those, for me, don't overthink it. This guy is a Packer. Love this guy. I would love to see him drafted. Maybe not at 23. I don't know how highly the rest of the NFL has him. But he's one of those, you drop back a few spots, you grab him. I think it's a phenomenal pick. And those are the two that really, stood out to me as guys that could have really high ceilings as far as interior O-linemen go, Gray Zabel and Rutledge. There's still a lot of guys, and then this is the part where I sort of turn back to Gut and go, look, you know what you're doing, man. They're all 6'5", 300 plus pounds. They can all generally move pretty well. They've started a lot of games in college. So it's a don't overthink it kind of thing for me. And after, there's really not a high top level, right? Like I was talking about, those guys aren't guys that are demanding to be taken in the top 10 or top 15 or whatever. But there's not a huge drop off after that. There's kind of a downslope, but it's not a big drop off. There's some good interior O-line talent that's going to be available on day 3. I look for the Packers to really build out the O-line and the D-line in this draft, man. This is a trenches draft.
I hope so. Yeah, I hope so. And I want to put one other name out there, Donovan Jackson from Ohio State. I like him. He started at guard, but then Josh Simmons, their left tackle, got hurt, and they kicked him out. And took him a little while, but then he was really good down the stretch and throughout the playoffs playing left tackle.
Yeah.
And I mean, he's likely an NFL guard, but he's got that versatility where he could probably do both. And who knows, maybe you fall into a left tackle. Like he was damn good down the stretch for them. He's big, he's got long arms. It most likely a guard, but he gives you that versatility too. I liked him, but I'm with you. This draft is about building the lines, and I'm all for it. I expect them to take one or two offensive linemen throughout the draft, and then obviously, we've talked about it, and we'll talk about it again. Is at least a couple of defensive linemen as well. Like build up your lines, and I would, I'm more than happy for them to do that. That's what my hope is: build up both sides of the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, and I would say there's no shortage of Goot guys in this one. If you're nervous about those types, is there another, maybe an Elton Jenkins floating around out there? Yeah, I'd say so. Like I really think that there are some really high quality starters available in this draft. Maybe not a Jack. Who's the guy for the Colts? The guard. Is it Jack Nelson?
Oh,
Quentin Nelson.
Quentin Nelson, yeah.
Quentin Nelson. Maybe not a Quentin Nelson. That guy's a big nasty. He's probably a future Hall of Famer.
Right.
I don't know if you got a future Hall of Famer interior in this class, but you got some high quality starters, and I think you even all the way out to day 3. So keep your eyes peeled on these guys. Like I said, they're all 6'4", 6'5", 310 pounds and can move. So the days of being like, hey, there's a big guy, maybe we'll get him, those are kind of over. Like all these guys are big, they're athletic. Some are more athletic than others for sure, but most of them can get the job done. So trust Goot to sort these things out. One, if we can look a little bit deeper, let me see here. I was trying to pull from my Shrine Bowl guys. One guy who's kind of big, he might be a little bit out of the mold, but also looked really athletic at the Shrine Bowl, was Holland Pierce, 6'8", 344, tackle out of Rutgers, played left tackle, a lot of snaps at left tackle last 2 seasons, but also started out at right tackle in 2022. So he's got both right and left side experience at tackle. Probably not sliding into guard at 6'8". But that's a dude that I think is flying under radars. And after seeing him at the Shrine Bowl, he really looks like he can hang at 6'8". Like the thing you wonder about a 6'8" guy is, is he athletic? Can his body hold up? Does he look strong, or does it look tough to move? Like Shaq. Shaq's not an athletic big man, right? He looks like his knees are just screaming at him every time he runs down the court. No, Holland Pierce is athletic. This guy can move. So he's one to keep an eye on. Day 3 kind of guy. And another one, if I can try to find him here real quick. Well, Bryce Cabledew out of KU. He's another one. He's got some experience moving around the O-line. He had a good Shrine Bowl as well. What did I miss? There's one more guy I was trying to shout out from NC State. Tim McKay, that's what it was. His name's Tim McKay, NC State interior O-lineman, also had a strong Shrine Bowl. He met with the Packers at the Shrine Bowl. So did Bryce Cabledew. So there's a couple guys that you might hear about on day 3 that I really enjoyed watching at the Shrine Bowl. They look like they can get it done. They're just not high profile guys. It's kind of hard to be a sexy high profile guy as an interior offensive lineman, but those are guys to keep an eye out for on day 3, especially. So, all right. So we're building in the trenches, man. Any final thoughts? Any names you want to throw out there on the wish list?
No, I think that's good. And when we get to day 3 and they take an offensive lineman, okay, I'm going to trust them because they've developed them in the past and they've been able to find those guys. And I think bringing in Aaron Banks now, having Jordan Morgan there, even the development of Telfort and Glover and Monk, like now you can bring in those day 3 guys and they're further down the depth chart, which gives them more time to kind of develop, right? Like you don't need them to immediately be the number 2 guy or the next man up if somebody gets hurt, because you have more depth in there and it allows them a little bit more time to get their feet wet. So expect at least 1 or 2 offensive linemen, I think. And when they get to the 3rd day, just trust in them because they found a bunch of them already. So
absolutely,
believe they can do it again.
get excited even. It's like, oh, sweet, we're getting a value pick here. We're going to find a starter on day 3.
They know what they're doing on the offensive line, which is great.
They do. So we got to root for that, and I think we will see a few more of those gems come out, at least one of them. I'm with you. I'm going to make my prediction as I think we'll get 2 offensive linemen and 3 defensive linemen. I think that's how it'll land. I think 5 of your total draft picks are going to be in the trenches.
Okay. I'm down with that.
So, yeah, there we go. All right, so we can cross the O-line off the list here on this draft. We got to name our little draft adventure that we're doing here. We have to come up with some clever names for this thing. But next week we shift onto the defensive side of the ball. We have been exclusively on the offense so far. Next week we're going to get over to the D-line, interior D-line. Pass rushers are coming for you. We are going to figure out who's out there. Maybe find a couple gems, maybe some diamonds in the rough. Dig a few up in the day 3 rounds. We'll see, but there's a lot to look at. There's a lot to talk about. There will very much be quality starters, I think, on day 3 in the interior D-line. So just write that down, and we're going to get into it. But we appreciate y'all hanging out with us on the Packers Weekly podcast here every Monday night at 9:30 p.m. Central. And if y'all had fun with this episode, enjoy this episode, please spike that like button for us. Share it with your friends, and most importantly, head on over to the Packers Talk Network YouTube channel. Hit that little subscribe button and the bell next to it for some bonus points. Only takes you a few seconds. Does us a whole lot of good. We really appreciate it. Helps us grow this show, keeps us talking Pack every week. And we will see y'all next week, Packers fans.